Well, hello again. Welcome to our second video lecture. This is on supply. So we're going to be looking at what supply is, what's necessary to have a supply, looking at the law of supply, and we're going to be looking at supply shifters. So once again, follow along in your notebooks, take notes like you would in any other class, and here we go. Okay, first we're going to start with what supply is. Very similar to demand, there are two conditions that have to exist for there to be a supply of any good or service. Those two conditions are willingness and ability. So they have to exist, they have to be met in order for there to be a supply of products. Now that we know what supply is, we can understand the law of supply. And this is it. The higher the price, the more quantity is going to be produced. So there's going to be an increased supply with a higher price. The converse is also true. When the price is less, then the amount supplied or the quantity produced is going to also be less. Alright, so looking at supply shift factors, let's have you set up a matrix just like the one you did for demand, but this time you'll be filling it out for supply. It should look something like this. The first supply shifter we'll look at is changes in the cost of inputs. Any change to the cost of the factors of production for a particular good or service is going to result in a change in the market supply. Again, factors of production are land, labor, and capital. So if the price of any input factor goes up, there's going to be less of a supply on the market. So lower costs, more supply, higher costs, less supply. The next supply shifter we'll talk about is changes in the number of producers. The number of producers affect the amount of supply. So if there's going to be more producers for one good or service, there's going to be more of that good or service. The converse is also true. If there's less producers, there's going to be less supply. The third supply shifter is changes in conditions due to natural disasters or international events. Weather and other events like war or rebellions and revolutions can influence the amount of supply available. So an example would be an ice storm moving through Florida is going to reduce the supply of oranges and orange juice. A revolution in Libya is going to reduce the supply of oil. The fourth supply shifter is changes in technology. Better technology can reduce the factors of production and make goods cheaper to produce. A great example is a robot in a car factory. Rather than having to pay several dozen people to put a car together, we can make a robot assembly line, build the robot once, and it continues to do that labor for us without the additional cost of future wages, future benefits, etc. The fifth supply shifter is changes in producer expectations. This is very similar to a demand shifter, which is changes in consumer expectations, but it's basically the same. Producers make decisions based on the expectations that prices are either going to rise or fall. So if a farmer predicts that prices of wheat are going to rise next year and prices of corn are going to fall next year, he's probably going to plant a wheat crop instead of a corn crop. So they've got to do a cost-benefit analysis before they decide what to produce. And this is true in any industry, not just agriculture. So a change in producer expectations can shift the supply of a particular good or service based on what a producer expects is going to go up in price or what is going to go down in price. The sixth and final supply shifter we'll talk about today is changes in government policy. A government can affect supply in two ways. The first is a subsidy, which is a cash payment aimed at helping a producer to continue to operate. We can see an example of this from our own country looking at agriculture and agricultural subsidies. Now, when a farmer isn't expected to break even for producing food, the government will often step in and pay them a certain amount per bushel of what they produce. So rather than falling short and actually taking a loss, the government will step in to make sure that a farmer's work is profitable. A government will do this in cases where it's vital to national security that that good continues to be produced. So food is most often where we're going to see subsidies. The other way a government can affect supply is through an excise tax. This is a tax on the manufacture or sale of good. A great example of this is on alcohol or cigarettes. There's an additional tax on top of the sales tax that's designed to discourage the purchase, discourage the manufacture of certain goods. Now, these goods are still going to be demanded and they're still going to be supplied. The cost is just going to be a little bit higher to slightly discourage consumers from buying them and producers from making them. All right, that concludes our video lecture on supply. Thank you so much for sticking around. Remember, if you didn't get something, please rewind, go back, watch it again. If you can't get it, try and Google it and see what you can find out. If you're still stumped, bring your questions to class tomorrow and we'll talk about them before we move on. Before you come to class tomorrow, I also need you to make a supply schedule. It's going to look very similar to the demand schedule, and I'll put that back up on here after this. Bring that to class. Tell me if you'd be willing to produce a double cheeseburger for $1 or $2. Would you be willing to produce a cheeseburger for $10? Fill that out. Very simple. Bring it to class. We'll graph our supply curve in class, and we'll talk about how supply and demand interact. Thank you very much. This is Mr. Parsons signing off.